concerns. Well, worries over security slopes, stray dogs and subpar hotels. It's been a long list of negatives, isn't it, so far for Sochi. Can these games get anything right? Well, our next guest has been to more than a dozen summer and winter Olympics and has been credited with turning the London 2012 Olympics into a success. Former marketing director of the IOC, Michael Payne, joins us now from Sochi. Listen, there's always a lot of stories in the run-up to any of these events, but this has been a particularly worrying period of time, hasn't it? Are they going to get this right?
Becky, I think, as you say, there's always an awful lot of background chatter in the lead-up to the Games. What we're seeing here from the IOC standpoint is frankly nothing new. And it really starts once the opening ceremony begins and the Games are defined then by the 17 days of sports performance. Certainly the feedback you're also getting from the athletes who are coming into town is seeing facilities like they've never seen before. Very positive feedback from the Athletes Village. The media, TV facilities and press centre is also getting very high reports. There's always issues around the fringe, and the organising committee is working flat out to get them right. But you've seen that before London, even before Lillehammer, probably the most successful Winter Games ever. The week before was not a pretty picture.
Listen, viewers have been with me for the last hour. They'll have seen how windy it is here in Abu Dhabi, where it should be about 20 degrees. On the ground in Sochi, there is no snow. Of course, the mountains have got a little. They've got snow machines. I mean, was this the right place to hold the Games, do you believe, at the end of the day?
I think you've got to ask that question following the closing ceremony. The ski conditions and everything up on the mountain, I think, are excellent. The weather challenges, if you go back to Vancouver 4 years ago, was awful weather and rain, really forcing postponement of events. The weather conditions here for these Winter Games currently are looking an awful lot better than they did 4 years ago in Vancouver, Canada.
All right. Listen, we've talked about the weather, we've talked about whether you think they're going to get this right in time. There's also, Michael, been a lot of controversy over the country's anti-gay laws, of course. The group All Out wants Olympic sponsors like Coca-Cola, McDonald's to publicly denounce Russia's law. I spoke to its co-founder, Andre Banks, earlier.
What happens when they go abroad? What happens when they're sponsoring an international event like the Olympic Games and they have an enormous opportunity to speak out in support of Russians who are facing real consequences, real violence and real oppression? They're staying silent. And I think what we've said and what many people have joined us around the world in saying is that Coke should have the same values overseas that they have at home.
When I was talking to Andre, he pointed out there was Article 6 in the IOC Convention, which, Michael, points to the fact that these games should be about participation for all. And their gripe is that they want these companies to come out and say, unless you willingly have gay athletes and gay fans, then these companies quite simply shouldn't be there. How do you feel about as the IOC chairman put it today, or the president, the politicisation of these games? I mean, it's not the first time, of course, is it?
Well, I mean, you say right. It's not the first time, and the politicisation of the Games has been there for the last century. I think President Bach has been very clear, and the IOC leadership, about the IOC's values, and that all athletes, no matter what gender, what sex, what position, are welcome. And they've received all the assurances and everything from President Putin. But, I mean, it amuses me, this gay debate. You go back to the Games in Atlanta, 2 years before the Games in Atlanta, when they had the volleyball in Cobb County, there was far more draconian proposals coming from the local community, anti-gay, and a whole boycott of sponsored products back then. So it's, it's not exactly a new issue.
Right, you make a very good point. On a scale of 1 to 10, then briefly, preparations, security, how things look going forward with, less than 48 hours to go? What would you give them?
Well, I mean, These will be my 17th Summer and Winter Games. Security is always an issue. There's been obviously a lot of debate about the issue and risk coming here. But I got to say, I've never seen such an invisible level of security that has been so discreet. You know, you're not seeing tanks on the streets. You're not seeing a lot of armed military, which you saw in London, you saw in Salt Lake after 9/11. I think, you know, so far the Russians have found an excellent balance between what is clearly a ring of steel outside the city, but within the Olympic environment and venues, not having security suffocate the atmosphere.
5, 8 or 9, sir. 5, 8 or 9. Go on.
Yeah, I think
one number.
I'll give it an 8. I'm going in at an 8.
Good on you. All right. Good. Thank you.
8.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.